Welcome to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein from Connecticut Capital. In this podcast, we help business owners and successful professionals plan for better wealth outcomes. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to help you identify better wealth decisions to help you achieve an unfettered life. It's time to ask yourself, what do you want more of?
Hello and welcome to Unfettered Wealth with Eric Tashlein. Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Eric. Doing great.
Nice. I'm excited. You've got a guest on today, and that is David DeMaio. How did you meet David?
Sure. So I am mutual friends with one of David's star employees.
Nice.
And she suggested, she's like, you and David have a lot in common from a hobby standpoint. And I recognized him as a leader in his industry. And one of the goals with the podcast going forward is to bring in, various leaders to talk about, the days of the covered wagon, when they had a smaller company, and how they've been able to grow it in Connecticut, which can be a challenging state at times. So I'm really pleased to have David here this morning.
Fantastic. David, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to hear what you guys talk about.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I just wanted to give a little background on David. I mean, all of us, I think, in Connecticut have been into Stony Creek, which is an amazing brewery. And many of us have driven by the Jaguar dealership up in North Haven. And all of us that are involved in some way with the manufacturing industries, I think, are recognized Lee Industries as a major player. And the common thread there is David's company, Munger, has built all of those great facilities. So really a pleasure, David, to have you on this morning. So thanks for joining us.
Again, my pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. So I'll give you a little background. I mean, everybody's bio looks as if their mom wrote it, but yours is better than most, I have to say. And but very impressive. Yours too. And what I love about David's background is, you started with a hammer in your hand back in 1983, and you were hired as a carpenter for Munger. And in 1992, assumed the role as president and owner. And I know you'll share that story. Not one to sit still, David took that really to the next levels. He started a solar division in 2009, which I think you were probably an early adapter with. And then in 2014, it really expanded the business further to do full commercial building makeovers to the highest degree. David went to college in the great state of New Hampshire at Keene State, which I had visited and had a few beers at back in the day. In 2000, and his background is a Bachelor of Science with a degree in technical and vocational education. In 2008, David became LEED AP certified. He's a member of the U.S. Green Building Council, the Connecticut Green Building Council as well, Connecticut Building and Industry Association. He was asked to join the New Haven County Chief Executive Peer Group and numerous other committees because of his background. A few things that stand out for me with David in our last conversation. I know he's a huge family man, and I know he's going to share about that. He's a winemaker, which I appreciate. And each year he participates in the Closer to Free ride. And from what I've been told, David, you've been bringing in almost $40,000 a year for that great charity. So congratulations on all fronts.
Well, thank you. That's a team effort. That's just not me alone. My sister actually is the team captain and took her lead. And we've been enjoying it and challenging ourselves with that for many years.
No, that's awesome. So today is a great opportunity for the audience to meet you. And I'm just curious, why construction for you? What led you down that path?
I think, I came from a blue-collar family. My father was an auto mechanic, ran his own repair businesses for a number of years, and actually ended his career as a teacher at Wilbercross High School in New Haven, where he took his skills and love for auto mechanics into the classroom to teach young folks. But I've always worked with my hands. I didn't acquire my father's passion for working on automobiles, though I have several classic cars that I enjoy tinkering with. But I migrate. My father always did everything himself, so he built his own home when he was very young. Whenever there was remodeling projects, and he would never ever shy away from picking up a hammer and a saw and building decks at our house, and whatever had to be done, he took care of, and I was by his side, and I learned that, and I migrated to that environment. I'm one that really likes to see at the end of the day an accomplishment, and in my idea, or at least at the time that I chose this career, seeing something that you can step back and look at that you physically did was very important to me.
No, I get that. Finance is an intangible business, as you recognize, and I love going out to have manufacturing clients and see some of the aerospace items they're building, and I'm sure you have that great quality in the business that you're in as well to see the end product.
Yes, it's very important to me, and that's why I migrated really from the teaching to actually working in the field, as I really enjoyed it that much.
Yeah, so you have an interesting story with Munger. I mean, I know you picked up a hammer and went to work, and if you could share with listeners just what happened over the period of years following.
Prior to graduating from college, I worked summers and vacations with some local builders, and when I graduated, I actually was working for a developer out of New Haven that offered me a full-time position. And in those days, and quite frankly, teachers were graduating and being offered about a $10,000 to $11,000 annual salary, and I was making far north of that with this company. So I just stayed with them and really enjoyed what I was doing. And as time went on, parted companies, and I was approached by Pat Munger, who was a client of my father's. My father took care of his vehicles, and knew that I was in the building business, so to speak, and approached me and asked if I would consider coming to work for him. And he kind of laid out his game plan. He didn't have anyone within his family that he would leave the business to, or had an interest in taking over the business. He had no children. And that was how the conversation went. It was, this is what I have, this is how I'd like you to come to work for me, and let's give it a shot, and if things are working out between the two of us, we'll see if we can strike a deal. And that's what we did. That was in 1983. I went to work for him as a carpenter, and worked on the construction sites, putting in foundations and pouring concrete slabs and erecting steel. He was really primarily in the pre-engineered steel building business. He was very interested in sticking with what they call shell-only construction, getting the foundations in, the slabs in, putting up the steel shell, windows, doors, and basically leaving the interior fit out to others. And as I migrated and grew in the business, I pushed that to a more full general contracting theme, which Pat was kind enough to let me run with. So after a few years of working in that environment, we did set up a buy-sell agreement, and we were 2 or 3 years into the agreement when in 1992 he passed away suddenly. There I was. The buy-sell agreement had clauses in it that allowed me to assume ownership of the business, and there I was fairly young with a pregnant wife, taking over a new construction company.
So, a little scary, I'm sure.
It was scary because also at the time, and Pat was a phenomenal man and a phenomenal individual and very generous. And at that point in time, not only was that new to me as running the full business without having the ability to take the buy-sell agreement to its completion, where I would have been mentored more by Pat and had more experience in front of customers on my own. We also had some bad debts at the time, and Pat was waiting patiently for people to pay some bills, and some of them were pretty significant. We were about $250,000 in the hole, and of course when Pat passed away, those people all of a sudden fell off the face of the earth, and so that made it that much more challenging, and really took a lot of support from my wife to agree that this is what we wanted to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the fact that you actually, he was able to, he thought about planning, right? And was able to put something in effect that benefited you and his family ultimately. I know when you spoke of Pat the last time, you just talked about, which I really appreciate, the loyalty you had to him. And if you want to share some of the things that you feel like he would be proud of since that time, I'd appreciate it.
He never ever mentioned this, but I always felt compelled to never change the name of the company. This whole business is not about me as an individual. It's about the company and what the company stands for. And I've had many people, including my accountant and folks that help us with our legal items, say early on, why don't you change the name of the company? And I just could never do it. I mean, Pat was a known entity in the industry. He was well respected and liked by people, and that was the name of the company. It wasn't about me. And Pat was very generous to me early on to even offer me that opportunity. So I hope that I hope he's proud of where I've taken the company. We've grown from, when I went to work for him, we were 4 or 5 employees, if that. We were doing a fraction of our revenue. If we did $1 million or $1.5 million worth of revenue a year, it was a lot, but that's all he needed. He lived that lifestyle. He was very happy and doing well. And now we've grown to 70 employees. I think 75 right now, to be exact. We've really put ourselves on the map as a leading commercial industrial construction company in Connecticut. So hopefully he's happy with that.
Yeah, I'm sure he is, and I appreciate the loyalty. When I see it. So I know you guys are in different areas. Would you say that you have a certain specialty at this point? I know you're doing a lot of COVID work on the side also, but is there a specialty or just would you say you're more so a generalist?
Well, since the company's founding, we've always been specialists in pre-engineered steel building market, and so that's really where our roots are. The design, build, delivery process is where we specialize. And if it's a new building addition, we always tend to migrate toward a pre-engineered solution first. And the pre-engineered market has grown substantially, and the engineering and the design capabilities and the products that incorporated into the metal building industry have moved that whole sector of the construction industry into much high level and very technical building solutions. Years ago, it was, you're going to build a barn, you're going to build a simple warehouse, something agricultural in nature, you would lean toward a pre-engineered steel building. Nowadays, you'll see very complex office buildings, manufacturing facilities, medical facilities, shopping centers, and many of them start off with a pre-engineered system and then are cladded with any variety of different products. So clearly that's where the design build delivery system utilizing pre-engineered systems is clearly our main forte, but we do all types of low-rise construction, also utilizing other building systems, interior renovations and fit-out work, and service work. Service work is very important to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I was just curious. I was actually up in North Haven the other day, and I just happened to notice the Jaguar facility. Was that a pre-engineered building that you enhanced?
Yes, absolutely. That was a pre-engineered system. The building manufacturer that we align ourselves with, which is going on 30 years now, has some unique systems. They have what we call hybrid systems, where you incorporate not only pre-engineered the values of pre-engineered systems along with some conventional steel, and they also have a true conventional steel division. Pre-engineered isn't the solution for everything, and they recognize that early on from a manufacturing point of view. And rather than say, okay, we can't design that and we can't manufacture that, they actually have stepped into the structural the true construction steel market, and have given us that capability as well. So,
Oh, that's neat.
yeah.
I'm a big. I've always been a boat nut, and so to me, it sounds like a semi-custom boat build, right? Like you have some options that you might be able to utilize there, which is really neat. And I think that's kind of the best of all worlds.
It really is. There's all kinds of it's like I said before, it's not that simple concept building anymore. It can be, and we do plenty of those bread and butter jobs. But you could see by the Land Rover and the stuff that we've done for Lee Company, places like American Polyfilm, very complex and really beautiful looking buildings.
Yeah, no, the Jag building is special for sure. So, you've been at it for a while. I know you grind it out hard over there. You're working hard all the time, and as you say, you take a lot of pride in the end result. Are there any other things you'd want to share in terms of some things you wish you knew when you began your career at this point that you might want to share with some of the newer business owners that might listen?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I think the first thing that comes to mind. I don't have a business degree. I don't have a business background. When Pat passed away and I was suddenly, running this business and doing all aspects of the business, the estimating, the selling, the project management, the, meeting clients, the financial side, I didn't know any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know enough to align myself with good accountants, good bankers, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. I didn't know enough to create that team. And, therefore, made a lot of mistakes and I struggled a lot. I describe it as, how do I get from where I was to where I am? Is early on, it was like, a football, running back, just keep pounding the wall and pounding the line and pounding the line until you make a hole. You get through that hole and you get to that item accomplished and you just go pound again and pound again and pound again. And I didn't have the time, and I didn't take the time to step back away from the front line and say, okay, what could I be doing better? Who could I be learning from? Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of folks, you say, oh my God, the accountant's going to cost me X amount of dollars. The legal advice is going to cost me X amount of dollars. I don't have that money. Well, you know what? You can't afford not to do that. Mm-hmm. I think those are the biggest mistakes I made early on. I was not aligning myself with those good quality people and building that trusted advisor team, mm-hmm. as I would call it. So,
no, I think that's great advice. You also you mentioned also that something that you benefited from tremendously was some coaching, which I'm a big fan of. Would you care to share that with everybody?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, as this business grew and I've got some great people working for me. That's the key. You got to have good people and you got to empower those people and you got to trust those people. Even though I had these great people surrounding me now, and this goes back to, probably 7 or 8 years ago, I still was holding on to the reins so tight. And it's hard as a business owner when you've started where you start and you grow the business. How do you let go of that vine and how do you, mm-hmm. Put the real trust in other people so that you could continue to work on the business instead of in the business? And this was like age 54, 55. My business was at a plateau and it wasn't growing and we couldn't get any further. And, realized after talking to some people, and I was involved in a couple of professional peer groups, that mm-hmm. I was my own worst enemy. I was mm-hmm. Everything that happened in this company had to go through me, and there just wasn't enough time in the day to do it. And until I learned and had the coaching and learned to trust the people I had and empower, those people were just dying to get a hold of the reins and show mm-hmm. me what they were able to do. And until I came to that realization, this business was going to go nowhere. We had plateaued. And that took a long time, and it still takes me time. I'm still releasing items. But that was the turning point on, what was the major roadblock to our growth in our company was not empowering the people you had to really take the leadership roles that they were capable of doing.
Yeah, I think that's true with any of the really, great business owners that I've spoken to over the years. Just the ability to, kind of self-reflect, right? And say, hey, what are my weaknesses? And admit to it, right? Because not everybody wants to.
We went through the typical SWOT analysis, where I put myself on the podium and said, okay, guys, take your punches. Really, I mean, it was a hard thing to do, but I learned so much from it. I learned a lot of great things too, all the positives. But then you got to reveal where your weaknesses were, and if you want to move on, those people that came to that SWOT analysis, I've done a couple of them in the past 8 years, are people that are outside my business, have nothing to do with construction. Some of them are involved in construction. They're suppliers, they're subcontractors. There are key people here: my banker, my accountant, my bonding agent, lawyer, and you learn so much from doing that, and it is humbling, but it's well worth it. And out of that also became the idea of, okay, what are we going to do with this company when it's my time to go? And we started a great succession plan. We've got we affectionately call them Tier 2 leadership team that we're training and developing for that transition. So it's still hard to let go of the vine. Don't get me wrong. This is not an easy thing to do. And I still struggle with bits and pieces of it. I got to know, and I try not to micromanage. But that's what you got to do.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. I mean, it's the old joke, right? Like my old office was next to a cemetery, and you look over, you're like, there were probably some businessmen over there that thought they were indispensable at one point, right? So, you have to recognize that we're not here forever. And, when you have young talent, like it sounds like you do, I appreciate the fact that you're training them up to eventually be your replacement. So that's great. That's great business.
Well, I owe it to them. I mean, if they've made a commitment to this company, I've got to give them the tools and the resources so they could be totally successful. Their livelihood, their families are depending on that.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned at one point you have a coach or had a coach, and that as the business expanded, you found a certain system through this coach that has been effective to help you grow and manage and delegate on multiple job sites. Is that something you could share a little bit about?
Sure, yeah. I still have the coach. He's indispensable.
Okay.
He will be here as long as I'm around.
Okay,
and I think Tier 2 is he spends a lot of time with Tier 2, so I think as long as he's around, I think he'll be as long as he's around, this company will use him. But he introduced us to a program called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's by Gino Wickman, and he's written a number of books, but the main book is Traction, and it takes you through the 6 steps of this system. And this was such an eye-opener for me, and I had to read the book twice in the beginning. The first time I read it, I said, this is too complex for us. We're never going to be able to buy into this. This is for big companies. And then I took the time to read it again and really break it down. And it turns out that this book the process is so easy when you break it down and use it, and you have somebody that can actually take you through the process. And not only is it for business, this process can be implemented in your personal life at home. If you sit on boards and different committees, this system is simple and it works. And I recommend it highly.
Yeah, so if you'd be willing, if you could have an example in your life, to explain a little further, kind of some of the inner workings of that, I'd appreciate it.
So the first thing is we had to do here is we had to develop a leadership team. I had all these great people working around me, and but they weren't. I wasn't empowering them to be leaders and take control of certain things. So we set up a leadership team. We went to these people and told them what we wanted to do. How we wanted to move the company forward and prepare the company for the next generation, and to help them become better earners as well. And we explained to them what we wanted to do, and they bought into the idea of Traction. They were all given these the book to read and the process to understand, and they started together. I mean, the process includes the people, which we now had. What were our visions? we have a tool called the Vision Traction Organizer. It's filled with different data on goals, 1-year goals, 3-year goals, a 10-year, they call this big, hairy, audacious goal that you want the company to reach at. We worked on all our processes and procedures, which we're still doing. We're constantly revamping them, but processes and procedures, so everybody in the company does the same thing the same way when it comes to process and procedures. We have weekly, without fail, what we call our L10 leadership team, level 10 meetings. They're 90 minutes. They're at the same time every week. And the leadership team gets together and we talk about, we look at our scorecard. We develop a weekly scorecard on things that we want to track, such as for us, it's, leads into the business, the number of estimates that we've produced, the value of those estimates, the gross profit on those estimates, the number of jobs closed, the gross profit on those jobs closed. We track overtime, we track warranty hours, and then we also track on a weekly basis from our business development and marketing program. We track the leads that come into the business. So that's the health of the business that we track on a weekly basis. And then we also tackle issues during that meeting, and out of those issues comes to-do items that everybody on the leadership team will have some to-dos that they have to complete that next week, come back and report on them. It's just an ongoing, really exciting process.
Now, I appreciate the accountability there, right? Because nobody wants to show up that next week having not done their homework. I mean, I'm sure it happens from time to time, but I'm sure they get a look from you or somebody else on the team. So I love that.
Yeah, that's something that we need to work on, is holding people accountable. You learn early on too through this process that you agree to disagree, and you don't attack the person, you attack the issue.
Sure.
And one thing we do have to get better at is really holding people accountable. If they haven't done what they were asked to do, okay, you let them slide a week, everybody gets busy, but 2 or 3 weeks go by and they still haven't done that. We really need to learn to hold people accountable, including myself. I mean, I need to be held accountable to the rest of the group, and because we know each other for so long, I think that's one of our weaknesses as a group, is to learning to really hold people accountable without attacking them.
Sure. Now, I mean, all these are learned skills, right? I don't think anybody is launched out of high school or college and has the ability to delegate or manage well, or come up with ways to hold people accountable. I think all this is learned. So I appreciate that. You recognize that, hey, I need to bring in some experts and to move you in the right direction. So that's probably a good reason why you've grown as you have.
There's no question. When we implemented this process, we saw an exponential growth in our business. I was able to concentrate more on doing things for the business rather than always in the weeds. Don't get me wrong, I need to get down in the weeds, but yeah, it's definitely helped a lot.
No, I get that. I think as a business owner, I mean, I know where you're coming from. I always want to have my thumbprint on everything, and it's not possible, right? And you owe it. I know you care deeply about your family too. I know that you want to take some time outside of work as well, and you can't do that if you're trying to control everything. So I appreciate all of that. Any other thoughts for business owners in general? Anything else that you've learned? Because these have been all great.
Well, I kind of hit on it. At the end of the day, we're a construction company, and we have tools and equipment and a place of business, just like any other construction company. And what really sets us apart are our employees. That's what we have to offer our clients. And through your employees, you give them good service, good quality, you give them respect, you give them trust. Without those employees, you're going to go nowhere. So don't forget to empower your employees, to spend time with your employees, to train your employees, to thank your employees, to appreciate your employees, because that is what you have. If you take care of your employees, here's the process. If you look at this as 3 points, take care of your employees, treat them as well as you can treat them. Obviously, we hold them to a high standard, so this isn't a free ride. They're going to love where they work, and if they love where they work, that's going to show in their performance. It's going to show in their discussions with customers, and they're going to treat the customers, and the customers are going to have such a wow experience that the customers are going to rave about you as a company, and your business will grow organically. I'm not saying that you shouldn't invest in business development and marketing, but take care of your employees. They're going to take care of your customers, and your customers are going to take care of you.
No, that's for sure.
That's the bottom line, and it's that simple equation. And again, we don't, nobody gets a free ride here. The expectation, I have expectations of my employees, and my employees have expectations of me. And those should never waver. But you could do that respectfully, treat people well, and you're going to be very successful.
Oh, that's all great advice, David. Thank you. So I know you put in a lot of hard work there. I know you enjoy, helping your clients achieve, their vision. Tell us a little bit when you're not at work, which I'm sure you're thinking about work almost 24/7, but when you're not at work, tell us a little bit about your family and hobbies outside of it.
Oh, sure. Well, Pam and I have been married for 37 years. It was 37 years, October 1st.
Congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. I met her in college, though we didn't date until we were toward the tail end of our senior year. But I knew her about 3 years prior to that, and we, spent some time together, but never on a dating scene. She's also a teacher by trade, and she taught locally and loved what she was doing. And we have two boys. When our older son Mark was born, she continued to teach. And when James came along 3.5 years later, it just was really impossible to grab those two young kids first thing in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, get them out of bed, get them over to daycare, get off to school, and really do your job and function and everything. So, we sat down and said, we're going to make it happen. Don't worry about it. And she decided to stay home with the children. She maintained her education credentials so she could continue to tutor on her own schedule. So she still kept her hands in education for a while. And then as the kids, as Mark and James got older and were off to school in their earlier days, she would get them on the bus, and we had a long discussion about her coming into the business because the business was growing and we needed some help in the office. And she agreed to do that. We had some pretty tight terms on when and when not to talk business. But she's been here ever since. She's become a very integral part of our growth and our support here. Just a phenomenal person who has been behind me and beside me as this business has grown. So she's done a phenomenal job.
That's great.
Mark, our older son, is currently a Providence, Rhode Island firefighter. Went to Salve Regina University, got a degree in accounting, got his master's, an MBA from Salve as well. Got to play football for them, which was really exciting.
That's awesome.
And had a job in corporate America for a while, which he absolutely hated. He kind of, a little bit reminds me of, what do you really want to do? And he had, a lot of discussions with him and everything. And at the end of the day, he wanted to do something that really helped people. And at the end, he just couldn't make that connection when he was working in corporate America and the job he was in. So he went on and got himself got invited to the training program for Providence, Rhode Island, and graduated number 1 in his class.
That's fantastic.
So he's out there took a substantial cut in pay, but loves what he's doing. He's been married a little over a year, and they live in Stephanie and he live in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. She works for Lululemon as a retail buyer. So
that's good to know. I have two daughters at home, so I have to take note of the discount.
Yeah, there you go. Right. And James, who is our second son, went to New England Institute of Technology and was actually that's one of the few post-secondary education facilities that actually gives you a college degree as well as a trade. It's a really interesting concept. So he was in their automotive program, and really thought he loved to tinker with vehicles. He had my father's genes for that. Very mechanically inclined, and to this day he'll think nothing about ripping his truck apart. He's got an antique truck that he just pulls the engine out of and does all kinds of things that I wouldn't even think about doing. Very talented. So, but he did a little bit of time in an auto garage while he was in school, and realized that his love for working on cars really didn't translate into a career. And in his senior year of college, he said, do you mind if I come to work for Munger? I'd like to give it a try. I said, absolutely. We couldn't think of anything more exciting to have, my son in the business. But I said, this is where you're starting. You're starting in the field, down at the bottom of the trenches. I am not his direct report. He is, for obvious reasons, part of our Tier 2 leadership team, so I mentor him at that level and his leadership development and other items. But I am not his direct report. He's moved himself up by his own effort and hard work to a project supervisor, and he's doing a fabulous job for us, out there running some significant work for us.
That's great.
So he's also recently married. He got married this summer during COVID. The wedding got canceled twice, and finally they said, listen, we want to get married, and if we did a very small, I think there was 10 or 15 people at the ceremony. It was lovely and all done for the right reasons. And
sure, that sounds great.
Yeah, so he lives locally in Guilford. He actually bought my mother-in-law's house, so he's in my wife's homestead.
That's a great town. Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I pass through New Haven and I hit Guilford area, I feel like my blood pressure drops. It seems like vacation land up there. So I appreciate that town.
Yeah, thank you.
The other thing is, as you're talking about, your father and his mechanical ability and your sons, my dad used to, had a lot of mechanical background and would race cars up at Lime Rock a little bit in Savin Rock.
Cool. Yeah.
Back in the day, and he has some great stories. As a matter of fact, the gas tank that they used back then was a beer keg, and and they weighted the wheels with steel plates, so in certain turns they wouldn't flip over. And he did pretty well with it. One of his friends, unfortunately, had an awful crash, and he retired. But he would always ask me, he's like, Eric, you want to help me work on this transmission today, rebuild a carburetor? And I did a couple of carburetors. I was like, Dad, I have no interest. I'm sorry. And so either you have it or you don't, right? In terms of that gene.
Right.
Good stuff. And I know, I have to ask you about the wine. I've made wine with a very old Italian friend, and it's okay. We seem to have thousands of fruit flies that come from somewhere unknown, but I can't say our product's great. How's your wine development been?
Actually, if we can pat ourselves on the back, I think we've come a long way. I too started with, the older generation Italian people I learned to make it with used to buy old whiskey barrels. They didn't want to spend any money. They'd buy the cheapest grapes they could, and they didn't want to spend any money. So our aging and fermenting barrels were old whiskey barrels that my job was to take apart and try and scrape as much charcoal out of as you could. So you can imagine what the wine tasted like.
Tasted like ours.
It was pretty bad, but we drank it because we made it, and we were proud of it. And as time go on, I now make it with a childhood friend who I grew up with from kindergarten. In which we just love spending time together. And, we actually, our turning point was probably about 12 or 15 years ago. We made a batch of Pinot Noir, and, we subscribed to the old method of no additives, no preservatives, and what have you. And we lost over 100 gallons of Pinot Noir. It just was undrinkable. And
that's tough. That's heartbreaking.
It is. And so we went up to M&M Distributors in Hartford and said, hey, what do you think went wrong here? And they said, okay, what do you do? And we told them what we do. And he goes, you guys have been at risk since you started. We would just rinse the grapes. I never heard of sterilizing the must, which is after you crush the grapes, to sterilize that. And they explained to us that you have no idea what's on the skins of those grapes. There's all kinds of different yeasts from, all the ragweed and honeysuckle. It could be anything on those. And by rinsing them with water, it just doesn't purify them enough for you. So he said what you really need to do is you need to get in the habit of inoculating the yeast or the must it takes a very, very small quantity of potassium metabisulfite. It turns this beautiful must, which is this gorgeous, ruby color if you're making red wine, and it turns this ugly gray color in seconds. So you're saying, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And they said, "Well, just bear with me." And then, 24 hours later, and then what they do is they sell you the correct yeast for the grapes that you bought. And now you're adding yeast into it, which is a whole, chemical process. We got very technical with our testing and how we inoculate our must, and our wine has really improved substantially. And we really enjoy making all kinds of different varieties. We buy grapes when they're in season, and we also a couple times a year we'll buy some wine kits where the juice and must is created at the vineyard and frozen and delivered to you frozen. So now we're able to. So the only thing we're not doing is crushing when we do that. We're still going through all the other processes of adding the yeast and the fermentation process and checking for a specific gravity and blah blah blah. But what allows us to do now is to actually bring in some varieties of grapes from all over the world, where you normally wouldn't be able to do that. So we're making wine from grapes from South Africa, from deep into South America, from Australia. So it's really opened up a lot of different varieties for us, and we make
I'm impressed. That's like I feel like a D3 athlete. You're up at the Division I level now. This is
not quite, but we really enjoy it, and we constantly have something going on because we age everything in oak barrels. So we'll ferment it in stainless steel. We'll let it reside in stainless steel for a while. We'll move it into oak. Some of the wines we don't touch for over 2 years before they're ready to drink. So it takes a little bit of patience. But once they're bottled, we don't let them sit on the shelf.
Well, there's times I'm given homemade wine, and I'm always wondering what the experience is going to be like. But I'm sure your friends, when they receive bottles, are very pleased. Sounds like you've upped your game a lot.
We have our own labels and everything, so call
That's
ourselves
awesome.
brothers of the vintage.
That's very, very cool. So
it's fun.
So as this comes to an end, there's a couple other questions I have for you. First of all, I wanted to thank Karen DeVecchio, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. She was a Rotary president around the same time I was, and just a great person, and that's how we were introduced. I wanted to thank Karen. Also, I want to ask you, if there's, I know you're somebody that is giving and cares about your people and your family. Are there any books or items that you tend to give away to friends or folks that help improve their lives? Just curious if you found anything that's been helpful in business or life.
Yes, actually, there's actually 3 that I tend to migrate to. I give traction all the time.
Awesome.
I think that's just such a great read, and you really need to read it twice, and you could use it at any point in your life. So I think that could be a game changer for anybody. There's a book called The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, and it's all about earning the trust position. And when you earn the trust position with your clients, with your family, with your friends, with your employees, it just accelerates your relationship and accelerates your business. And I think that's an important. That's not the only book on trust, but that's the one that I enjoy. There's another book called Lifespan by David Sinclair, and he breaks down the very complicated genetic makeup of our body, and he subscribes to the notion that aging is a disease, and a disease can be treated. And there's many techniques in his book about how you may be able to delay and, dare I say, reverse the aging process. I'm not sure if I go that far,
Oh,
but it
that's
does
cool.
talk about it in the book. But certain things that you can do, I mean, you can go overboard with any one of these things, but if you read that book, there's going to be 3 or 4 things that you could easily implement and maybe make a difference in your life as you get older. So
No, I mean, I think aging well is important, obviously. As business owners, and you're putting in 6 days a week, you got to take care of yourself for sure. So
try not to miss a morning of workout.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the tagline for our podcast is unfettered wealth, and to me that means unfettered means having freedom to choose what you want to do each day. I mean, you've obviously been at this for a long time, carrying the torch, and not that you're going away anytime soon to retire. But what do you hope your efforts in business someday allow you to do from a freedom standpoint?
Well, first off, I want to be able to get to the point where I want to be of value to this company for a long time, but I want to elevate myself to a point where I'm not involved in the day to day. I've turned over the reins, and I become a real mentor to the company and the people that are leading it. That's one. I'm looking forward to helping through my knowledge other people grow. Especially, I think I'd like to have the opportunity to mentor some young folks, whether it be those that are, going into business, construction, or just in general. I'm looking forward to sharing what I've learned. I'm kind of excited about that.
Sure.
Get involved in a nonprofit or some organization that I may be a value to.
Sure.
And then, of
that's
course,
on my list also. Excuse me, David. That's something on my own personal list. So if you find something, please put me on your checklist to help out. That'd be great.
Yeah, and then of course the things that I enjoy doing. Spending time with my wife. We have we have a couple of classic cars. We have a home in Vermont. So I guess it's kind of doing what you want to do when you want to do it, but still being mentally and physically active in some things in life for a very long time. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
No, that's awesome. So great podcast. I appreciate all the ideas that you've shared today. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach you at Munger?
The phone number is 203-483-3645. I'm at extension 13, but I can pretty much tell you that without fail, if you call between 8 and 4:30, somebody live is going to answer the phone. I'm here, a little after 4 in the morning, and we're here late at night, till at least 6 or 7. But Donna Turbert is here as a receptionist, and her mission is to pick up the phone by the 3rd ring.
That's great.
So,
that's
awesome.
Awesome.
My email is David DeMaio, all one word, at mungerconstruction.com, or you could do info@mungerconstruction.com. I'm not a big social media guy. I'm not on Facebook or anything like that. Maybe I should be, but I'm not. The company is.
Sure. No, I'm the same. I'm the same way.
But nothing like a phone call. I try to encourage everybody in this company that emails are good, but you got to pick up the phone, and so I don't mind phone calls.
Awesome. And your what's the website address, David?
It's www.munger, Munger, construction, all spelled out.com.
Guys, this was great. A fantastic podcast. Eric and David, fantastic today. I appreciated getting to learn more about your company, David, and I agree 100%. That traction book from Gino Wickman is fantastic. So I loved hearing you talk about that. Eric, any closing thoughts for today's podcast?
No, I really appreciate David and what he's shared today. I think there's a lot of emerging businesses here in the state that could use some advice like David's provided. And I appreciate that he's extended his email out to the audience. So thank you, David. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It was an honor to be here, and look forward to staying in touch with you, Eric.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And of course, last thank you always goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Eric comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Connecticut Capital Management Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Connecticut Capital. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Content should not be construed as personalized investment, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, or tax advisor in regards to your individual situation. Eric Tashlein is an investment advisory representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, and Connecticut Benefits Group, LLC are not affiliated.